Our deported lawyer, Miguna Miguna, is set to return to Kenya in 2 days' time. That is on May the 16th, 2018. It will be the second attempt by Miguna to enter to his country of birth after his deportation. Miguna's dramatic return was thwarted following his forceful second deportation to Canada on March the 29th through a Dubai-bound flight. Let's now speak to George Morara. He's the vice chairperson of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. The commission was very instrumental the last time Miguna tried to enter the country. George, thank you very much for making time for us here on KTN News Desk. The KNCHR has written numerous letters to the government just trying to ask for a smooth return for Miguna Miguna. What is the status currently?
Well, Akisa, thank you for having me in studio. The latest letter that we wrote to the PS, Gordon Kihalangwa, to just find out preparations that have been made in line with the court orders for Miguna's return. As you might be aware, we have gotten a response to that letter, and the response is really pretty much from Kihalangwa and the Ministry of Interior is the maintenance of the status quo. They have responded and said Miguna has to follow the law, Miguna has to regain his citizenship back and all that. But I think that's a very unfortunate position to be taken by the government because, again, the PS Kihalangwa is asking Miguna to follow the law. When that ministry has broken every single piece of law that has actually been in place or that is in place regulating the whole issue of Miguna's citizenship. If the Ministry of Interior and Coordination of National Government was keen on the issues of the rule of law, they should have actually gone to the law that regulates the issue of revocation of citizenship as clearly spelled out in Section 21 of the Citizenship and Immigration Act. That section is very clear on the processes and procedures for losing your citizenship. It starts by advising the minister, the advisory committee, Citizenship and Advisory Committee advises the minister, the CS, on the reasons why they think a certain individual should lose his or her citizenship. And that individual has recourse to appeal that decision in line with fair administrative action. That has not happened for Miguna. So you cannot be talking about the rule of law for Miguna when even the law that is supposed to govern that relevant ministry is not being adhered to.
So you think they have double standards?
Absolutely, because what kind of law and order are you telling Miguna to follow when you can't actually follow the written law that is supposed to govern even the whole issue of the revocation of citizenship? So for us, I think that's an issue of double standards. It should not have been happening. We were treated to high drama when Miguna first attempted to come into this country. We hope we're not going to be treated to a second round of high drama on this second attempted return, on this return that Miguna has actually announced.
But with the grandstanding, Miguna, of course, on his social media pages has insisted he is jetting back into the country on the 16th, which is Wednesday this week. The government, as per the latest letter that you have gotten from the PS Immigration, Gordon Kihalangwa, it is that they need him to follow the law. So what are the chances we will not see, since we saw last time at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport recap?
It's not Miguna insisting that he wants to come back. Miguna is required in this country by court orders, and there have been no less than 10 court orders. So I really shudder when it's being reduced into a Miguna affair and not an issue that is actually very active before our courts of law, and the state is being asked to comply with those court orders. It will be incomprehensible to imagine that all these judges, including the magistrate in Kajiado who have pronounced themselves on this matter, starting from Justice Wakiaga, coming to Justice Kimaru, Justice Aburiri, Justice Odunga, the Honorable Mlochi, that all these judges somehow are bound together by a common thread of conspiracy against the state. That is not the case. What they're doing is interpreting the law in line with the Constitution, especially Article 20, which requires them to interpret matters of the Bill of Rights in a manner that is actually enhances the realization of those rights. So the grandstanding, unfortunate. This is not a Miguna affair. Miguna is actually required by courts of law, and the courts have clearly given direction on this matter. We therefore expect that these, the relevant officers will be bound by that court directive and bring Miguna back.
They have already, like you said, the government has already proven that a pattern has been established of breaking the law constantly as far as this particular issue is concerned. I mean, we don't expect, do you expect that this time round they will follow the law?
Well, if indeed we say we are constitutional democracy that is supposed to be guided by our various provisions of the Constitution, which is a document, Akisa, that Kenyans really struggle for. Let's not struggle today to take this country back from that very painful past that we're trying to come from. All of us remember, and we've even read in our history books, that even if the Lancaster House Constitution was not representative, at least it was a good document. Problem with it was that over time it was progressively chipped to a situation whereby we had actually an executive that's completely unaccountable, that was very powerful. The judiciary could not actually dispense justice in line with the principles of the rule of law and all that. Parliament was completely emasculated and all that. So at this point in time, what the Interior Ministry is doing is really taking us back to that very painful past by their flagrant disregard of the court orders. And I think everybody should be outraged, including the judiciary, that their orders are being taken for granted. When the judicial officers sit in those courts, they swore to actually be led by the Constitution. Their orders are guided by the rule of law. And when those orders are not obeyed, then I don't know what kind of country we are establishing for ourselves. So
then what options are we going to see the KNCHR explore, because we know how instrumental this particular organization has been as far as Miguna Miguna's case is concerned?
Well, you're right, because for us, even before the court ordered that we go to Jomo Kenyatta International Airport to really monitor his return, we had been seized of this matter from the time his house was broken into at Runda. And consistently, we followed the slew of violations that have been meted out against him. We've documented those ones. We've even submitted a report to our courts of law on the raft of violations that have actually been committed against Miguna. We are glad that at least Justice Odunga started by showing us the right direction, that if court orders are issued and they're not obeyed, there is punishment for that. So even if it was, some people say it was a slap on the wrist for Boynet and Matiang'i, the fact that they were found to be in contempt of the court is in itself something that we want to pursue. We want Miguna to be compensated for the damage, his property that has been damaged. We want Miguna to be brought back. And at this point in time, what we can do is play our part. Our part is document those violations, then we hand it to the relevant other stakeholders and actors, in the hope that they'll also be quote-unquote decent enough to be bound by the rule of law and do the right thing.
From the latest events, what does it say about the human rights space in the country?
The human rights space in the country, well, if we continue down this path, then it will be a path whereby those ones who are in power, the powerful and the mighty, can really choose what parts of the law to obey, which part not to obey, and all that. And broadly speaking, really, we've even seen, broadly speaking, from a human rights perspective, even the attitude towards the regulation of the human rights space. Akisa, I've been in this studio many times talking about the Public Benefits Organization Act that's supposed to govern the functioning, especially of NGOs that deal with human rights. There's no attention being paid to that. So I think slowly by slowly, that space is shrinking, and we owe it to ourselves to ensure that the Bill of Rights, which is the longest chapter in our Constitution, doesn't really get hollowed out by installment, as is currently the case.
Thank you very much for making time for us here on KTN News Desk. George Morara is the Vice Chairperson at the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, just talking to us about some of the expectations, some of the efforts they have been making as they try to ensure a smooth return for Dr. Miguna Miguna, who was deported back to Canada on the 29th of March. So it's a matter of wait and see for now. Remember, Miguna Miguna is expected back into the country on the 16th of May, which is about a day from now. So we will be seeing how the events will follow. As Judge Morara here says, they hope that the scenes will not be as ugly as what was witnessed the last time Miguna was in the country.